Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of the Future Tech podcast series. It's me, Charlie Sell, the Group MD for Arrows Group, where I interview, speak with, have just open conversations with tech leaders, exec coaches, people from within the technology business, always wanting to find out a bit about their story, a topic that's really important to them, we think resonates to many of our listeners, and we always finish on that all important career advice. So I'm really pleased to have Meg Leahy with me today. Meg is, she's a personal leadership and exec coach, but off the back of 20 years of technology, hands-on technology experience, progressing from being an engineer all the way through to leadership roles, and then transferring that into the coaching world. And off the back of that, now running courses for leaders where she can marry the two. And having met Mag now a couple of times over VC, I can see exactly why that leadership and blend of technology and leadership comes through so nicely. So Mag, welcome to the podcast.
Well, it is lovely to be here, Charlie, especially when we're so well rested after a lovely long weekend. Looking forward to chatting today on interesting topics.
And that's it. We were actually just speaking about that, weren't we? The long weekend, and we both had quite wholesome ones, really, in many ways, which is nice. And you're telling me you're quite a fan of the outdoor swimming as much as everything else, which keeps.
Yes, I mean, I think that cold water is quite magical to the body. Whatever it does, you come out feeling very pain-free and very alive and refreshed and sharp. However long that lasts for is a different question. But yeah, we were talking about the different types of swimming as well, whether you're a lane swimmer and you like to go up and down, or, you know, if you want to paddle with the ducks. So there's something for everyone around North London, which is good news.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's jump in and please tell us a bit about your story.
Right. Well, I was born in the southwest of Ireland to a very non-technological family. We didn't even have a computer at home for a long, long time. I think we initially got an Amstrad, and for some reason, when I was in my final years of secondary school, as we call it in Ireland, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and a lot of things were floating around in my head. And for some reason, technology came to the fore, and I think it was more out of stubbornness. So I went off to Dublin and I studied computer science and software engineering for 4 years. And then during that time, I got recruited to a lovely company called Sapient. They've gone through another couple of takeovers and being taken over. So I'm not sure what they're exactly called now, but I worked there initially in London. So I've had most of my technological career in London. I've stayed in the front end arena. I've become a front end specialist. And then, you know, there was leadership along the way. So I was working happily in tech and leading, and the pandemic hit. And then that pushed me on to a new course in my life. So I actually contracted COVID in July 2020, and that forced me to stop, basically. So I wasn't able to work. I wasn't able to think properly. My body didn't work in the way it used to work anymore, and it was really challenging. So after about 5 months of that, I was thinking I can't sit around idly just feeling miserable all the time, because I'm quite a goal-oriented person. So I started looking into coaching. And the reason for that was previously at the start of the pandemic, I had been on a Leaders Who Coach course by Better Conversations. And that was all around trying to make leaders better for their team. So teaching them skills about listening well, which sounds very basic, empowering the people around them, you know, having good conversations, having difficult conversations, recontracting, all of that stuff. And I thought, this is really good stuff. And this aligns very well with how I think of myself as a leader. So I guess the coaching course, which is pure coaching rather than it being a leader and a coach at the same time, became really an obvious step for me to kind of keep me mentally bright and emotionally positive. So I did a course in Dublin, and that they were really nice about my illness, because some days I was just lying in bed with my mic off and my camera off. But anyway, we got through it all together, the group of us, and then I became a personal leadership and executive coach. So I've been mixing that up with as much as my health allows, with a new opportunity that's come about in the last year as well, which was actually becoming a tutor on that course that I mentioned earlier. So now my days are spent between coaching people directly and teaching leaders how to coach in their role as leaders. So it's very rewarding, and it requires some changes to the way I think between the two roles. And I just think there's an incredible amount of talented people out there who are just waiting to learn this sort of skills. And it's rewarding to be the person to help them get there.
Yeah, and really well done you, because it's what I love about your story is it also shows that how careers can progress and they can take different directions, and sometimes you can't control those directions. It can be hit by an illness or a change in family lifestyle, or for many reasons. But the more we adapt and grow, actually one door closes, another opens, doesn't it, I guess? And it feels to me like that's part of the journey you've found, that from being very much living the world of technology and going through the sort of the very not traditional routes, but going through the levels of management and leadership, to actually then do a total pivot and say, well, actually there's a part of this I really enjoy and I'm ready to invest my time in that. That's a brave but really well done you.
Well, thank you. I think it was out of necessity. So I think, in a way, one of the best skills we can have in life is to be adaptive to the things that are happening around us. So it was really an outcome of that, being able to control my time more. So setting my schedule, capping the number of clients per day. And then it's just grown as I've grown in health. And that's not linear, as life is kind of a common thing, is it's never linear. It's kind of probably like a stock going upwards. So yeah, no, I'm really happy where I am right now. In lots of ways, even though the illness side of it has been incredibly challenging, I'm very glad about how it's all ended up today.
Yeah. And so let's think about that. We'll talk about that, what you're seeing in leadership and coaching, and maybe what's the most common sort of misconceptions when people step into leadership roles for the first time. And for many of our listeners, whether they're about to be going into a job and they'll be working for a leader, or for many people who are in that leadership role right now, what do you think are the common, what have you seen as the common challenges that people may or may not even be aware of?
Well, I think a common thing in the first place is the fact that it tends to be subject matter experts who get pushed into leadership positions without any support or training. And they're completely different fields. Like when I think of myself with my headphones on, coding away, and having a lovely time getting pieces of work done, putting tickets through, leading is a completely different thing. Your day is no longer measured by your output. It's measured by the output of those around you. So I think there's a lot of skills that are needed to do that role really well, to be the kind of leader that you want to be. And that's probably the first question, is what kind of leader do you want to be? Because I, over my career, have come across many different types of leaders, and I would probably classify those into two buckets, which are prestige or hierarchical. So prestige is the kind that I would like to be, and I encourage others to be, where it is really about you doing a good job and you're recognized because of the things you've done, because of the relationships you've built, because of the output of your team, because of the growth of your team, versus hierarchical, where it's very sort of, you need to do this by Friday, but the contracting part and the involvement is less there. So I quite feel a bit rebellious about that kind of leadership. But when I'm involved and when I feel I'm being listened to and when my expertise is being taken into the final decision, And when I feel like an equal, I'm really much more involved and giving and generous to those around me. So I guess that's one thing as a broad bucket I would kind of put in place. But then within that, I mean, people have many different styles. So I think there is a thing about finding out what your style of leadership is and then grow the style of leadership that is natural to you. Coaching leadership is very much about involving the person on the journey. So it's not about the hierarchy and I'm the boss. It's very much, hey team, we need to get this thing done. Is everybody clear on what the vision is? What are the challenges we're going to face? What's the plan? When do these actions need to be taken by and by whom? You know, it's very clear and everybody is clear on how it's going to work out. And I think Agile, actually, to mention a methodology in technology, is definitely gearing us towards that. I think pre-Agile, it was much more hierarchical, where there was a poor project manager trying to herd the cats of the technologists. But now we all have power, like we all have to communicate and we all have to be responsible for the things we agreed to. And, you know, at the end of it, there's a reflection period via a retro. So we sort of, you know, that's where I want to be. That's what I teach. And it involves having better relationships as well. And considering we spend such a huge amount of time at work, you know, those relationships become very important. From a young age, I think I had a sort of a deathbed scenario for myself. It's quite a pleasant one. It's not painful or anything, but I look back on my life and I think about, you know, what it added up to. And ultimately, it won't be the projects we really delivered or the money we earned or anything like that. It'll be the things we faced with the people and how we faced them and how we held each other when people needed to be held and how we challenged each other. It'll be all of that rich experience that I would remember.
Yeah, and again, I just totally agree with you. You know, I also, in my career, I think probably 5 years ago, that I started thinking, how do I want to be remembered, and have I empowered people around me to be better than they can be, rather than holding people to contracts or clear outputs that doesn't resonate. And it's great that you're able to articulate that in that sort of way, because you know, life is for living, isn't it? And work should be part of your lifestyle, not a consequence of it, I guess. And so thinking about again what you've seen, and I really love how you talked about leadership being either prestige or hierarchical, and you're right, subject matter experts tend not to always be the best leaders, or at least they don't know how to be a leader, and they need to go on a journey. What advice do you have, or could you share a couple of pieces thinking about people in that sort of section? They're taking on their first 2 or 3 hires, or they'll be managing it. Yeah, any snippets from your side?
Absolutely. There's lots people can do and have the power to do. So I would say number one is find a mentor. So find somebody who's ahead of you on the journey, who does what you want to do well, who has the relationships with their team that you'd like to have with your team, who, you know, invests in themselves, who is continuously learning. You know, set up that relationship saying, hey, I would love to learn from you. You have permission to open the floodgates of your knowledge onto me. That's a really good start, in my opinion, is really just learning from someone who's been through it all, getting their resources, getting their support, having someone to bounce ideas off and be challenged by. Secondly, this is a privileged thing. I think the mentor side is probably available to anyone in a role, but the coaching side, if your company is the type of company that likes to invest in their people and they consider coaching to be one of those means, then talk to a coach, you know, get your style of leadership figured out, find out what your values are, get really familiar with them, and then start to live by them. And the more you do that, the less there is in terms of friction in your life, and the more there is in terms of flow. find out your strengths, find out what the strengths you have that you are not realizing that you're not using enough, and start, building towards using those more. And then, find some education. Go on a course that helps you to grow your leadership, and helps you to grow it with people who are in the same boat as you, and where it's a generous community and you can be supported through that as well. So they would be the sort of the three ways that I would mention initially of where to start.
Yeah, and again, this is brilliant, because a lot of what you're saying I can really resonate with, and I don't think you can ever be too senior not to have a mentor. And I don't think you can ever be too senior not to be open to more coaching or different styles of coaching, and for learning and adapting. So I think and understanding your values, and being proud of them, I guess, because you don't want a carbon copy. Not everyone has to have the specific same list of values, do they? But if you understand what yours are, you can really hone in to how you can develop, and you'll have people follow you who believe in those same values, I guess.
Well, also the other part of it is to make sure you know the values of your team, so that you can harness that so that everybody's working with their values, being honored. You can. I think what you said there as well is that you're never too experienced to have this type of support, of course, because we're all emotional, organic creatures, and we all suffer from doubt or overwhelm, or something can be going on in our personal life and it can derail us. So I think we're social animals, and the reason why we've done so well is because of what we do together rather than what we do alone. So I think that applies. You could be as senior as you like, and without that system, it's a lonely road.
Yeah, and again, just couldn't agree with you more. So this leads us really nicely on, because we were talking before about part of the organisation you're with. You actually offer some of this type of coaching and leadership, and I think there's even. Would you want to tell us a bit about one of the courses that's currently out there?
Absolutely. So the company is Better Conversations, and Siham Cyrene, who has been a friend of mine for over 20 years, had a passion project where she was a coach and she was coaching lots of people, but she needed to do more. So affecting one person within an organization is great, but as you can imagine, it doesn't shift a lot of things in a direction. So she wants to cause basically a leadership rebellion via Leaders Who Coach, which is the program we offer. And we offer it paid to people. We run a couple of cohorts a year, and you get to go through a rich course. But we're also trying to have social impact. So we're offering it to 100 leaders, and we're coming up to halfway through that offering. And what that involves is leaders who have 2 to 3 direct reports, and they've been within 12 years of full-time education. They can apply to our course, and they can tell us, everything about themselves. And if they're a fit, they get to go on a 12-week program over 14 weeks. And we cover lots of amazing topics together over 12 live calls that last 90 minutes a week. That peer group becomes something that lives on beyond the course as well. So you get to have some of those structures in place that we were talking about earlier, such as, having peers, having the network around you. It's about 4 hours of work, including the call, a week, and you get a CBD credit of 50 hours for the course. It's a lot of videos, a lot of quizzes and assignments. The assignments really help you to dive deep into who you are, how you interact with others. You've got to do some coaching scenarios during the course, on the cohort calls and on your own. And for me, as a teacher on the course, it is incredible how you teach the same skills to different cohorts and different groups over time, and how they each interpret them differently, and how they add beauty and different perspectives all the time, which I take away and I use as a coach as well. So I'm always learning from everyone around me. It's not a one-way thing. it's really an amazing course. We've had wonderful feedback from it, and we get to form really strong relationships with all the leaders who go through the course. So it's an utter privilege. So if this sounds like something you would like, if you want to be the kind of leader that people go towards rather than go away from, that you can build good teams with good relationships, that you can have difficult conversations, you can have clear conversations, you can support your people the way they need, then get in touch with myself or Siham Cyrene from Better Conversations, and join us on Leaders Who Coach. The specific one, the social impact, is called X100, which is very exciting.
Well, fantastic. What a lovely way to sort of bring the podcast to an end, because that social impact, the fact that your organization is doing that and has 100 slots for people who are obviously have to be serious about it, and I really think making that application and being able to commit the time, I can imagine that that has to be a real consideration in these type of things, because you only get out what you put in, don't you? So exactly. But to have that course, and for many of our listeners, the Future Tech, that's part of what this podcast is all about. It's not only aimed at young people entering their careers, but also for that next level of young people who are in those leadership roles. And as he said, two or more reports, less than 5 years from being outside of education. Sometimes you can be left in that middle zone where you don't get the support because you've come out of doing the formal training of your job, and you maybe not at that senior level training. And I think it's brilliant what you're doing. X100 sounds like a great course. So what we'll do,
amazing.
Yeah, brilliant. And I'll make sure when we post our bit on LinkedIn, we'll make sure there's a link in our comments box. So again, for all of our listeners, when you see this podcast live, go and look in our comments box, and we'll make sure there is a link to that course so you know where to apply. And if we can just get 5 or 10 more people applying for it from this podcast, that's been a really, really lovely value, because it's what this is all about. It's helping young people in their careers. So Mag, thank you so much. That's been such an eye-opening conversation, and thank you for your openness as well. I hope you've enjoyed it.
I've loved it. Thank you for helping me to spread the word. I said rebellion earlier, and I meant revolution, but they can both be similar kinds of things. But yeah, let's start a revolution.
So the leadership revolution is what we're looking at. Brilliant. Okay, and so to all our listeners, thank you. That's another episode of our Future Tech podcast. The podcast is on our webpage, arrowsgroup.com/podcasts. It's also on our partner universities' career portals. We now have just under 40 universities partnered up, where our podcasts are on their career portals for you all to be able to listen or even watch if you wish. So one more, a massive thank you to Mag for being on the show. And
thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Fantastic. And to our listeners, this is another episode of Future Tech.